If you have got this function f of x equal to minus 2 times 3 to the power of x minus 1, if you know your properties very well, before you sketch it, you should know that, okay, my a is negative, my b is positive, and it's greater than 1. Therefore, you are going to have a decreasing function, which means the curve is going to look like this. Okay? Because the a is negative and the b is greater than 1. Okay? Remember, there are two cases in terms of the shape. If the b is greater than 1 and the a is negative, you'll get a decreasing function. If the a is negative and the b is between 0 and 1, you get an increasing function. Make sure you're aware of that distinction. Okay? So first thing, find the x-intercept. You substitute f of x to 0, or which is the same as y equal to 0. Remember, I'm going to remind you again, was on Saturday you're going to see f of x, g of x. You don't need to get confused. It means y. Okay? You don't need to get confused when you see f of x, g of x. Right? So you substitute where there is f of x, you put 0. Now, your knowledge of exponential equations is required when you are dealing with the exponential function. Okay, especially when you want to find the x-intercept, you need to know how to solve exponential equations. So when you put y equal to 0 here, okay, you take the minus 1 from the right to the left to get 1, then you divide both sides by minus 2, you end up getting here. Okay? Now, you know from your previous knowledge that when you're solving exponential equations, you need to make the basis on both sides of the equation the same. Okay? So in this case, if you can manage to make minus a half or convert minus a half to a base of 3, then you can be able to solve for x. But it's not possible. You cannot convert minus a half to 3. What that means is the x will be undefined. Therefore, there won't be any x-intercept. So the graph won't touch the x-axis. Okay? So this is the x-intercept. It's not there. It doesn't exist. Then the y-intercept, you substitute x equal to 0. Now, these are key concepts that you are also supposed to be aware of before Saturday. Y-intercept, you substitute x equal to 0. Where there is x here, okay? Where there is x here, you put 0. Okay? This should not cause you to be nervous. You can even write once your eyes are closed. Find the y-intercept, you put x equal to 0. That's very simple. Okay? Then you simplify. 3 to the power of 0 is 1. 1 times minus 2 will give you minus 2. Minus 2 minus 1, you get your y as minus 3. So the y-intercept is equal to minus 3. Now, if you're also paying attention carefully, when I introduce the properties of the exponential function, I told you that the y-intercept is equal to, the y-intercept is equal to a plus q. Okay? I told that the y-intercept is equal to a plus q. So, what's your a here? Minus 2. What's your q? Minus 1. So, minus 2 minus 1 gives you what? Minus 3. So, we have the y-intercept. Then the next thing, we have one asymptote for the exponential function. One asymptote. And it's a horizontal asymptote. Okay? The equation of that asymptote is y equal to q. What is q? It's minus 1. So your equation of y equal to minus 1. Now let me remind you. When you are asked to write down the equations of an asymptote, if it's a vertical asymptote for the hyperbola, you start with x equal to something. If it's a horizontal asymptote, always it starts with y equal to. So if you're asked to write the equation of an asymptote and then you write 2, that's not an equation. If you write q equal to minus 1, that's not correct. Your equations must start with x or y. Okay? For the hyperbola, the equation of the vertical asymptote is always x equal to 0. It doesn't change. Your vertical asymptote is y equal to q. So for both the exponential function and the hyperbola, the horizontal asymptote has got the same equation. Okay? So we have got y equal to minus 1. Now, when you are sketching an exponential function, like the hyperbola, you draw the horizontal asymptote first before you do anything. Draw your horizontal asymptote first. So if I move on to the next page, I drew my horizontal asymptote first, and I wrote the equation of that asymptote. Y equal to -1. Then you need to plot the point where you've got the x-intercept if it exists, or the y-intercept if it exists. So here we don't have an x-intercept, but we have a y-intercept here. So you plot that. The moment you see that, okay, my y-intercept is below the horizontal asymptote, that should be a clue to you that, okay, the curve is going to be below the asymptote, which means it will be a decreasing function. Okay? So you draw it nicely, and you must practice this. During your own spare time at home, you just take a rough pen, and then you just play around how to draw the curves. Okay? So that you become a master of it. So draw a nice curve there, and then you are done. Now, the mark allocation for this is 3 marks to draw this. Okay? It's 3 marks. Okay. So the 3 marks, it will be marked for the shape, the correct shape. Okay? Then the horizontal asymptote, the other mark will be for the y-intercept. Okay? Then you get 3. So if you use a table, if you do all this work, this working out, there's no mark. Okay? You need to know that. The marks are allocated on the graph. Okay? How you get all this is not very important. Okay? Because there is no mark allocated. So even if you do it in the head, you just sketch it properly from your head. If it's correct, you deserve full marks. But why do I have to do this? As a teacher, I have to show you how I get to my graph. Okay? That's why I show you. That's why when I teach, I don't prefer to use the table because there is no mark for the table. Okay? Yes?
So the graph will be given to us on a page.
No, it's a sketch. So you draw it on the page. You want, okay, I think ma'am, she gave you like a grid. So it will make things much better. Okay, she gave you like a grid.
If you make a mistake, then there's no more paper.
No, you can request, you've got a right to request. And don't worry about mistakes, because this is very easy. I don't expect you to struggle to do this. Okay? Alright, so we have got that. Then the domain. Your domain is always x is an element of real numbers. So the exponential function. By now you should know that. And that's important if you are going to carry on with this subject up to matric. This is going to continue to come back. Okay? I always tell learners that grade 12 is very easy because most of the stuff you teach in grade 10 and 11. The bulk is done in grade 11 actually. Yes, I'm telling you.
Okay,
How much do you get for your minutes?
Right, let's not talk about me. Right, range. Right, the range. Now, the range is y is an element of real numbers. Now, common sense must tell you that since you have got an asymptote, that's the limit in terms of the maximum. But y cannot be equal to 1 because this curve will never touch the asymptote. So your maximum value is going to be a value below the asymptote. Okay, it's going to be minus 1 comma something, 1 comma 0, 0, whatever. Yeah. So when you write the range, you say y is less than minus 1. Okay, because y can never be equal to 1 because of the existence of the horizontal asymptote. So your minimum is down there, it's minus infinity. Your maximum is just before minus 1. So if you use this notation of the inequality sign, you just write it like that. If you use the brackets, it will be y is an element from minus infinity up to minus 1, then you put a circular bracket. Remember, the circular bracket means you are excluding both the lower limit and the upper limit. Okay, so you need to be very careful here. The moment you put a square bracket either on this side or that side, your answer becomes incorrect. Okay, so make sure you are very careful there. Okay, I prefer this notation, but you have to be very careful of not putting an equal sign. Okay, so that's it. Then, but we have got minus 2 there, and here it's positive 2. So the bases are not equal. Therefore, x is undefined. Okay? As long as the bases are not equal here, you cannot solve for x. Okay? So we say x is undefined, no x intercept. Which means the curve will not touch the x-axis. Okay? Then you find the y-intercept, put x equal to 0, a half to the power of 0 is 1. If you can't do it mentally like me, put that in your calculator. Okay? Your calculator will give you the correct answer. Don't have to stress. So a half to the power of 0 is 1. 1 plus 2, that's a 3. Y-intercept is 3. Okay? Once you get this, then you move on to your equation of your asymptote. The general equation is y equal to q. What's q? Is equal to positive 2. You put your equation y equal to positive 2. Then you move on to sketching. Okay? You move on to sketching. Wonderful. Alright. Then here, you draw your horizontal asymptote. You label it. It's y equal to minus 2. Okay? Then you plot the point where you've got your y-intercept. It's above the horizontal asymptote. Now, because the y-intercept is above the horizontal asymptote, that's a clue to you that the curve must be above the asymptote. Okay? It will never be below the asymptote because the y-intercept is there. Okay? But then the trick now is the graph going to be going down or is it going to be going upward? Okay? Now, for you to know whether it's going to be increasing or decreasing, it's going to depend on the value of P. So if you know your properties, you should know that, okay, since my B is between 0 and 1, it's a fraction, therefore it's going to be a decreasing function. So you draw it from the top, going that way. Okay, nicely. Then you get your graph. Okay? Then you get your 3 marks. Then I went further. Domain X is an element of real numbers. The range Y is an element of real numbers, but Y is greater than 2 because the graph is above the horizontal asymptote, or we say Y is an element from Y equal to 2 up to positive infinity. And then you are done. Okay, now the determination of the range and domain is part of the test. Okay, that's why I'm repeating it. Okay, again and again I'm repeating. Since I started the functions, I've been talking about range, domain, range, domain, range, domain. Okay, because it's a very important concept that if you understand it now, as you move up with the subject, grade 11, you find things easier for yourself. Yes.
So I asked that question of operators last next to the law.
Okay, generally a question like this, in most cases, they'll give you a sketched graph. Then from the sketched graph, they ask you, write down the range of this graph. So you have to write it as part of your answers. You don't write it on the graph. I wrote it on the graph because I sketched plus because I'm teaching as well. Okay?
So
Yes?
you get a mark for writing the equation next to the curve.
No, there's no mark for that. Okay? There's no mark for writing this. For writing f of x equal to a half to the power of x plus 2. There's no mark for that. Whether you forget it or you write it, there's no mark. The mark is for the shape of the graph, the horizontal asymptote, and the y-intercept. Yes? Yes, that's possible. That's why the next aspect that I'm going to talk about is finding the equation of an exponential graph. For every graph, remember I told you there are 4 things that you need to know. 1, the property. 2, the sketching. 3, finding its equation from a given sketch graph. 4, interpreting the graph. Okay? Those are 4 things that you have to know for every graph, from the linear up to this one.